Morning, everyone. Coming to you from the tree stand this morning here on the family farm. And we are going to touch on knowing the difference between a morning and an evening sit in a stand location. And as soon as I turn the camera on to start doing this, we're on the house farm here today, and where everybody is, we're not doing any of the traveling right now. And so we're here on location, I guess you could say. And as soon as I started the video, I looked out and there's about 200 yards out. There's two of them now. I don't know if I can turn this around enough that you can see them. Just on the outside of the switchgrass out there, walking across. And yeah, kind of neat. So what we're doing is we are talking about this morning. We're chatting about knowing the difference and how to tell the difference, how to choose those stand locations on these evening sits versus a morning sit, and how to feel 100% confident about these stands. This stand location that we're in here, you can actually see I'm facing the north, so you guys are looking to the south. You can see this ridge behind me. This stand here is kind of convenient, as it's only you can see in the background, I know the sun is there, but right over the sun right there is right in there's the house. And so it's just over the ridge. Actually, you can see the trim of the house right here, and it's just over the ridge from the house. Seems close. It is close, but this the house farm here is on 10 acres, so it's one of those deals. The way we have this set up and the way we hunt it is because of small parcel ideas, and it's a situation where it's a I got two or three stands. And we have to know that, how to hunt them and how to get in and out of them as far as morning and evening sits. So not only this farm, but taking all the parcels or property spectrum into consideration, how to know what is that morning stand and how to get into those, and what is an evening stand and how to get into those as well. I think the biggest thing to talk about is either or. And you hear me preach this all the time, but either or, it's definitely a strategy that you have to be. It's not I think I can. You have to know. If you don't have 100% confidence that you feel that strongly about being able to get in and out, not only in but out of that stand location, it's not a stand location, a high successful sit. It's not a high success stand location to me. So what I try to do is I always go above and beyond when I'm putting these parcels together and I'm working with clients, is to make sure, whether that's in a guiding situation, whether that's on a leased farm, whether that's like this is here on a home farm, you have to take those into considerations, especially on small parcels. Like we always push, is the fact is you blow those stands in a morning, let's say, when that stand should have been an evening stand, and now you've ruined the evening, and 75% of the hunting public has a very short window, and usually them windows are like on unless you take a week's vacation during the rut or whatever, then we're on those are on weekend sits, weekends. So you can blow a weekend in a quick hurry by not knowing that. So not making that determination ahead of time. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to walk you through this situation here, guys. This has changed, and this is a perfect spot to talk about changing and taking into consideration when to do that and how to do that, and it's okay to do that. This stand location here, I love the stand location. It fits. Last year, it's a ridge system, so you can see, like we talked, behind us here is the house, and I come over top of the hill here, side access, and this is a ridge from the house from behind me, and it goes right down right in front of me to the water. And I'll show you right down below here is pond, and you can see right in front of the stand, obviously I'm in this pinch point between the CRP or the switchgrass out here to the west, and the further you look to the west, that's the neighbor's property. You can see down in here is all a bedding area. Starts about 75 yards to 100 yards right there, and that's a parcel that we used to own, and we don't own it anymore. We sold it back in the mid 90s, and the gentleman that has that now, he's got 480 on that side of me, and then I've got 540 on the other side. So it's a very unique 10-acre parcel here, but I'm that transition area in between. So obviously, like I said, this is all bedding back in here. You've seen the video right up on the hill on our piece here that leads down to this is where I found that shed not too long ago, and it's a very powerful little spot. The deal is though, is because I've set this up the way I've set it up, some things have changed, and what it was before is there's ag to the east, to the far east, about a quarter mile, half mile from my center of my 10 acres here. It's almost 11 acres. It is 11 acres, but anyway, to the east is the large agricultural. To the west is all the bedding and the non-pressure. So the farm to the east gets way overrun with pressure. In the farm to the west, they're killing great deer. So we're right in the center of it, and this is just a bypass transition area. And the way that the ridge system here works, and the pond, it pinches this down. Like I said, you know, I'm in the stand location, guys, and you can see I've got 30 yards to the end of the pond, 25 yards to the end of the pond. There's a blowdown right here. This top is right here, and that's a oak that blew down during our tornadoes a couple years ago, and it just funnels everything right on this ridge, right in front of me, right between here. They have to go between on that side of the top, come in and out the through the pond. But what we've created, before I show you that, what we've created is I implemented down on the end of the pond here, I actually put in our food plot last year that I've been wanting to open up and get that active. So before, I was hunting it out of transition area. It's usually, you know, even though it's 100 yards to the west here, a northwest wind, west wind in the evening always worked great. But up behind the house, you see where that licking branch, and we have that water hole and stuff. That's where our morning sits were. So what we did is we implemented, I'll show you, I implemented this. Sorry about the hand in the camera, but we implemented this food plot that you can see in the background. So you can see the edge of the pond comes right down in, right through. That finger just goes out into the pond, but right around the base. And this whole bank here in front of the house was all clear cut. So you can see it just goes, it pinches them down right between the bank, the ridge, the bank, I guess I should say, and kind of out where that white birch is, the base of it. They go right down through, right around in the base of that hill. Now they're out in that food plot, and that food plot is, I just got it planted to rye right now, and we're going to finish it off, and it'll all be planted into a blend, or more rye here, and then the new owners can take it over and they can put it into brassicas come fall. And this is a unique parcel. I mean, not a lot of 11-acre chunks are stuck between two large tracts, two of the largest tracts left in Lake County, Michigan. But fact of the matter is, it's 11 acres. It's only 330 feet wide, and it's like 1260 or 1300 feet deep. So real narrow, real long. I've got a house on it. I've got a shop. You can see I've got a shop, 2 barns, horse shelters, pastures. Got another barn right here down by the pond. So it's a family. It's a farm. It's not a it's a hobby farm. It's not a hunting 11 acres, but the way it lays out, it's a dynamite 11 acres. So, but there's things that we're going to do to enhance this. So getting back to knowing the difference between these stands. The morning stands, guys, you have to be able, like I said, either or. You have to be able to understand if you're not 100% confident on these stands of what they are. Being able to get in and out of them is huge, and knowing if they're an evening or a morning set. To me, in the evening, you have to make sure, especially on small parcels, you have to be able to get around your food source successfully, and in between, on the back side of that doe bedding, let those does go back into the, you have your food source, and you have, in that first 75 yards, like we always talk about, you have that fringe of doe beds. So if you are successful enough and you can get around it, like we always say, side accessing on these farms. If you can let those does in the morning, they're in the destination feed location, whether that's ag on a neighbor's property or that's a food source, a food plot on yours. Let them get back into that fringe and that bedding area, not on the food plot. Don't be hinge cutting them on the food plot. Like I said, that first 75 to 100 yards off. Let them get back in that. And what you're doing by that is you're creating that day-to-day unpressured movement where those does feel free. If the does feel free, your bucks are going to feel free, and that's another video coming down the pipe here. But what it is you have to be able to get around. Now, on small parcels, it's even more critical, and on a 20 or a 40. Not putting these food plots right smack dab in the center of the farm, because you don't have enough edge, you don't have enough depth between your food plot. If you blow 2 acres in, like I've said before, and then you've got you've only got 100 yards or 75 yards in some cases between each fence row, it's tight to get in between there, and be able to hunt that. What that forces is it forces your bedding areas to be on your neighbors, and that's not what we want. So this situation is perfect. Like I said before, it's a perfect example. But mornings, you have to be able to get around that food source. So design these properties. So with that in mind, you have to be able to get around them. And if you do that for a morning stand, you'll be successful on an evening stand as well, because of the fact that you know that you can get around them, and you're not blowing stuff off from them. So morning sets are, you have to determine food source, agricultural, or food plots. You have to find that fringe of that doe bedding, whether this is on private or on public ground. Find that doe bedding closest to the feed, and you want to be behind it. You want to be between the doe bedding and your buck bedding. So on public land, you have to do your due diligence, or you have to your footwork is that much stronger to find these buck beds. We are able to, as private landowners, or leasing these properties, these smaller tracts, or up to a couple hundred acres. You can keep these transition areas short, and that's the goal. Shorter, not too short, but the correct length. But what you have to be able to do, you have to be able to get into a morning set between your fringe, your food plot, your ag, let the does get back into the fringe, into their bedding, successfully get in behind that. That's where your morning sets are, between there and bedding. In the morning, you want to be closer to the bedding area. And where I see, so in the morning, you're closer to the bedding. In the evening, you're closer to, in a normal situation, you're closer to the feed. You're closer to the up behind those doe bedding areas, just a little bit tighter. And the reason is you're taking advantage of those, that daylight movement. But with that said, is a perfect topic that I always touch on. This is why so that's the norm. That's what you're taught. That's what everybody's taught, is to pick a spot that is closer to the food source in the evening, closer to bedding, or closer to the food source in the evening, closer to bedding in the mornings. That's what you're taught. The fact of the matter is, as well as I do, this is something that I kind of coined years ago, and it's been successful, putting clients on it, myself on it, my kids on it, and designing these properties. On these small parcels, it's good to have a situation where you can hunt both. And like I said, that there's a lot of guys in the industry that'll tell you that you have to have one or the other, and don't hunt them both. 9 times out of 10, you're not sitting in these stands from daylight till dark on a small parcel, because like this here, it's a transition area, and there's no need to do that. And if that were the case, you might get lucky during a rifle season or something like that, where they're blowing deer off when they're coming out of the woods that are running through your property. But this narrow property with this open of cover in just this section of this corridor, if you will, this short distance of a transition area, I don't have that capability of holding numerous deer. And so the chances of catching a mature buck coming through here midday is pretty slim to none. But because it's open, there's stuff going on. The hobby farm's here, the horses are here, the hogs are clanging and banging around, the shop, the riding arena, all this stuff takes into it, the house just behind it, all this stuff takes into it. You have to take into consideration that when you're choosing these stands. But so what I create on these small parcels is, that's why I feel so strongly about these this hub style design that I create is because if you place this hub style design that I've got, just like a hand, you lay your hand down, you make these corridors. So in a in a morning setup, let's say you have your food plot on a small parcel in the right location so you can get around it, and so you can get in. When you pull in with your truck, your headlights aren't hitting it in the morning. They're not here in the truck, whether you have to park across the road, which you have to, if you don't live on these small parcels, you just buy them as hunting parcels. I highly recommend asking a neighbor if you can park down the road. The smaller they get, the more creative you have to get. So step one is don't blow them deer off. That's food plots. You got to put these in the right locations and be able to, feel comfortable about getting in there. So like I said, be creative, park down the road, whatever the case is. Get into these stand locations, behind these doe beds, so you don't bump them out. Let them go out to these agriculturals. Let them go, back into bedding. But if these hub designs, these transition areas, like I said, you put find your ag, you get the agriculture, or the food plot on your property, this fringe, and right behind that is where you create the hub. So your bedding area, your hub is facing the food, like we've always said. Your hub is here, your food plot's above it, and then your legs of the hub go down. So anything in the evening, is funneling out of it, going out through the hub. It forces them there. When they come back into it, they're directed back into their bedding areas, if you will. Then that transition area is created from the end of that hub through that in the corridors, in those bedrooms, if you will, like we say, back towards the buck bed. So in between that, like we are right now, that's where your bedding areas are, or your stand locations are. So that has to be promoted in a lot of these situations. But if it's done right, where I'm going with this whole thing, if it's done right, is you can hunt these in the morning and the evening. And that's why I place them. The narrower your farm is, the better they work. But the more creative you have to be, the more silent you have to be as far as getting in there. You have to be able to open trails, foot trails, make sure these foot trails are clear. You have them ready. Obviously you don't go in there after the leaves fall and take a leaf blower and start, blowing things out. But if it's as simple as keeping the sticks off from it when you walk in and you're walking out in the morning, throw these sticks off, whatever the case is, make it silent. You have a short window of opportunity. You have a small stand location selection, and it has to be right. So that's why these hub style designs that I create on these small parcels are so powerful, is because you can hunt them both ways. Now, if it's a situation where the wind isn't right, don't try to force the envelope and just sit in these stands. That's where public ground comes in. You find another stand location. Just use it as observant, sit on the road, observing your farm that night, whatever the case is. Make it right with the wind. But usually, so a recap is, a morning stand is always closer like an early season is always closer to your bedding. That is not, don't get the two mixed up where you're getting closer to your doe bedding. The object is, a morning stand is closer to your buck bedding, not your doe bedding. So in other words, you have to know where your buck bedding is, or you have to have created these buck bedding areas, period. You have to find it. You have to find these buck beds. You have to go the extra mile to know that's where these separate locations, these buck bedding areas are at, before you can say you're hunting a buck bed, location. So don't, not too close. A morning set is closer to the bedding. Don't get too close to doe bedding. Let that area relax. It has to be a sanctuary. It has to be untouched. Then an evening set is usually closer towards the feeding. But like I said, small parcels is, you might only have one or two of these hub style designs, or a bedding area in general. If you're not using my hub style designs, you might only have one of those, two of those, one doe bed, one buck bed on a farm, or if you're lucky, two buck beds, bedding areas. So having the capability of being able to hunt these morning and nights, that's why these transition areas in a hub style design are so important. If you're not enhancing your transition areas, if you're in a location or a situation where you're hunting a leased farm and you can't do any habitat improvements, public ground where you can't do any habitat improvements, you have to know these transition areas. You can't create them. You have to know them. You have to study them inside and out. You have to find these areas that are thicker, that they're using. Don't get caught in a wide open oak flat. That's a transition area. Those transition areas are usually, when you find them on public ground, those more open oak flats are destination feed locations, not transition areas. So you have to know the difference. You have to be able to find the difference. You have to be able to study them and why they are what they are. But small parcels, you study everything online. Everything that everybody's taught you in the past is always, just that, getting closer in the evening, being closer to the bedding in the morning. Fact of the matter is, you might only have 1 or 2 stand locations to begin with on these small parcels. And if you can place them in the right spot by enhancing these bedding areas and making these transition areas perform to the fullest, you'll have a situation just like this here, guys, where this stand location is, it's right here. It's only about 12 foot in the air. And the reason is because that's what I've got out in front of me. And the shooting lanes are established. Bedding area right here. I'm 75 yards, 60 yards from my fence row, and this is all, I'm going to drop a few more trees in there this year down towards the flat, create some more bedding. And this stand is actually coming out of here, and there's a octagon box blind going to get placed down the ridge here, about right in these pines you can see right here, just up on the bank, and it's further away from the bedding. It's further away from the bedding, and it's in between the feed, and I can still get out. It's a real thick pine line that goes right up to our house actually location here. But if the house wasn't there and this was a ridge, come up over the ridge, get down into it, all your locations running side to side, and it comes from bedding, goes out to feeding. You're in the center of it, so you can hunt it. If it's a north wind in the morning, you can hunt it in the north wind in the morning. The deer are coming past you, going out to feed. And in the evening, they're coming from bed, going out there to feed as well. Vice versa in the morning, coming back off the feed in the agricultural, coming right back through here on their way back to bed. So don't overlook these the small steps. Don't overlook this. Don't make it any more complicated than it has to be. Find them, enhance them, and you can hunt them both ways. You have to know the wind, but if it's not promoted, know the difference between a morning set and an evening set, and know your ins and outs, how to get in and out of it. Because the worst situation you could do, if you got 2 days to hunt, blow it on a morning, trying to push the envelope and trying to get around that feed location too tight, blowing it on a morning set, that blows that. So in other words, those deer don't go back to bed, they're bedding somewhere else. So on a small parcel, those deer are not going to be in those, back through those bedding areas into those transition areas on an evening sit. And what I find is guys blow it in the morning, they go right back to that same spot in the evening, and they sit there, whether they knew they blew it out or they didn't know they blew it out, one or the other. They sit there and they have unsuccessful morning hunts, then they have an unsuccessful evening hunt. What happens is then they blow it in the evening, and it's just you can see where this is going. It's a snowball effect that never ends. It never stops. Before you know it, you're through your 3-day weekend, and now you've got another week before you can hunt, and it's a situation that you just can't catch it. So that's why knowing the difference between the two of them to begin with, knowing how to get in and out of them. If you can hunt them both, make sure the wind is right, and if you can hunt these, I highly recommend enhancing them and placing these in the right spot. And if it's not a situation where you can't get around the egg, or you can't get, if it's too close where your situation is that you cannot get out of that food location at night, and so it's only a morning sit, the question you need to ask yourself is, can I get into it? Is it too close to the food? That food plot then, in my opinion, probably should be moved. Now, if you, like this here where our house is, where you can see the food plot, and you're only 100 yards from it, whether that's the truck spot or the house or the cabin or whatever the case is, if you can watch it and you know that there's nothing on there, and as soon as daylight happens, the food plot clears, get to the stand, get in it, then you can have 2-3 hour sit, and it could be successful. But you have to know that going into it. Don't wait until October 1st to be making that determination, because if you wait that to that point, it's too long. You're outside of the window. So yeah, I appreciate everybody tuning in, and if you got any questions, guys, feel free to reach out. And we're gonna get to work here on the farm today and enhance some of this a little bit. Thanks.